Show you got heart. Now we're playing the game and we're totally scoring. Learning how to make a break your world of business boring. Showing up every morning, ready for the show. I'ma get ready. Gold engaging virtual meetings 2.0.
That's right. It's time for another Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast with your host, John Chen. And if you are watching here on social media, do us a favor, hit the subscribe, share, like, or make a comment. If you make a comment on the live show, we might actually give you a shout out. Hey, a special one. If you're listening to this live, it's March 13th. In 2 days, the National Speakers Association's Northwest will be hosting their speaker showcase, and it's sponsored. So we got free tickets for you, whether you are in Seattle or you are virtual. You just go to NSA NW speaker, so showcase.eventbrite.com. NSA NW showcase.eventbrite.com. And we'll have a free ticket for you, and we'll see you. It's at Broadway Performance Hall on Capitol Hill or anywhere you got a Zoom link. Let's see, what else? If you are listening to this podcast, want all the episodes, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online, and you'll see over 100 episodes of Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast with amazing guests like the one we have today. And if you can scan this QR code or go to this website, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON, you can come to my Engaging Conference. It's the last week of October this year, and it plans to be spectacular the second year that it's going to be hybrid. Now, on to the show. This amazing person, she's a 24-year member of Meetings Professional International. She chairs the Committee Against Sex Trafficking, and she's a CMP, Certified Meeting Professional Fellow, a CMM, an HMCC, and a DES. We'll figure out what the rest of those are. And I heard she loves cats. Let's welcome Lisa Burkett. Hi, Lisa.
Hello,
How are
John.
you?
Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, where are you calling in from today? I think you're here in Seattle, right?
I'm in Seattle, yes.
And what can I ask? What neighborhood?
Town.
Which one?
Belltown.
Oh my gosh, you're downtown in Belltown. Yeah.
Yes.
Genius too. So cool. So 24 years MPI.
Yes.
You're getting close. Oh, you have one more year before you can get forever status, right? Do you know about that?
I've heard about that. I haven't looked into all the specifics, but you just prompted me to research that.
Well, you have to retire, but after you retire, you can go to as many meetings as you want for free. So,
Okay, well, retiring sounds like a good idea. I don't see it being in the cards right now.
yeah, not right now. All right. Well, speaking of not retiring and doing a lot of amazing work, Lisa, I want to introduce you to my amazing friends and audience and community. I want to take a moment to tell my friends who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, besides being an MPI member for 24 years, I've been in the industry a bit longer than that. Currently, I'm working for a Philadelphia-based travel company. They're Africa travel specialists, but they branched into government meeting management about 2 years ago and brought me on board this past September. Now, unfortunately, with the current situation with the federal government, I'm sure everyone watching is following the news very carefully. What we're finding is we're getting more cancellations than new bookings. So that seems to be the state of affairs these days, and we have to deal with it. So the more I can learn about virtual meetings, the better it will be for my clients and for my career. Previously, I moved to Seattle just over 2 years ago. I was recruited here by a nonprofit organization to oversee their national conference. Unfortunately, that was a case of government grant funding not coming through.
Oh,
So as a result, the conference had to be canceled and my position was eliminated. But it's been a wild ride, but it's been wonderful also. Very happy to be here in Seattle. I moved here from the Bay Area where I spent my entire adult life prior to
okay. Now,
that.
where in the Bay Area were you?
I lived in San Francisco, right in the city.
And what now? See, that's again, same thing. What neighborhood inside of San
What
Francisco?
neighborhood? Oh, Lake Merced.
Oh, Lake Merced. Yeah, my brother was near the Fillmore.
Okay, okay.
And
So
let's test
I
your
was in
San
the,
Francisco. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, I was in the south, for anyone who isn't familiar with the area, the southwestern corner of the city, as far as you can go to the west without falling in the Pacific Ocean, and as far as you could go to the south without crossing the city and county line.
Okay, let's test your knowledge. So my brother lived in a painted lady. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yes, yes. Around Alamo Square in particular, there's a famous row of them.
And
And
what do you share? Yeah, for my people who don't know what a
oh,
painted lady, what is
what
it?
are they? Victorian houses. There's a particular road, there's a neighborhood called Alamo Square. I recommend Google it. You'll get pictures of this. There's a row of houses all painted very vibrant colors. And they're referred to the Victorian ladies or the painted ladies. But there are Victorians throughout the city, various neighborhoods. The Fillmore, as you mentioned, John, uh,
Yeah.
Noe Valley is famous for them, many other neighborhoods, and many of them are painted really beautiful colors.
Amazing. Well, Lisa, let's start on the engagement side of in-person meetings, where I know you have a lot of experience. What do you think is important in in-person meetings to engage an audience member or an attendee?
Well, first of all, making sure that the agenda is completely relevant to
Hmm.
the prospective attendees and to those who are planning to attend. Allow the attendees to design the program, particularly if it's a repeat audience. You know, there's a chapter in one of the books that I use to prepare for and to teach the CMP exam. It's titled "Starting with the End in Mind." So,
Hmm.
looking at the evaluations, well, your last program, what did your attendees have to say? Were they happy with the program? Were the speakers engaging? Was there what we were fond of calling at the organization I spent many years with? Was there Monday morning application? So when they go back home, appear in the office Monday morning, could they apply what they learned to their jobs? Also, the balance of activities during the program, limiting the forward feed and making sure that there's plenty of time for discussion. Because something I've learned in many years of meeting management is some of the best learnings, well, you hope they come from the speakers. You certainly hope that's going to be the case. But the best learnings can also come from table discussion, small group discussion, where
Yeah.
everybody has a chance to participate and learn the perspectives of someone else.
Let
Someone,
me,
maybe someone they know, or maybe someone they've never met before.
I want to pause you there because I think
Yes.
that white space, especially in virtual meetings, but as in-person same, I mean meetings in general, is so important. And I think some planners fall in that trap of trying to cram 10 pounds into a 5 pound bag, if you know what I mean. So do
Yes.
you have like a guideline or something that helps you make sure that you either get that table talk or that white space, meaning unplanned time during a conference?
Hmm. I guess I'm not used to having unplanned time during a conference unless it's devoted networking time,
Hmm.
or maybe there may be some free time. You
Hmm.
you have to have that,
Yeah.
and not every moment has to be scheduled. That was a pitfall. I know I made that mistake when I was putting together some agendas, and I would work with our program committee and my executive management to make sure that we gave people enough downtime. When your attendees are, especially when they're offsite, they need time to check in with their families,
Yeah.
check in with their offices.
Right.
They have some work that they need to do. You don't want them to have to miss a session of the meeting that you work so hard to put together
Yeah.
because they have to step out for whatever reason, business related. Also, just some time to rest.
Yeah.
We all know the expression when meetings are so intense, the expression drinking from a fire hose. That's a number of the meetings that an organization I worked for was producing. That was frequently stated on evaluation forms. I believe I'm sure it was intended as a compliment, but sometimes it's just, especially if you're a new attendee, the overwhelm that you feel when you have so much knowledge being imparted and trying to digest it all.
I just had a friend, Leo Chan, post that he got a chance to present at South by Southwest, and
Mm.
he got at the end there was some Q&A and some other things, and this woman came back and just said, "This was the exact right program I needed to hear now." And she kind of like broke down crying, right? Like it was something really, really important. So I'm curious for you, Lisa, you know, when attendees are engaged, sometimes magic happens. You know what I mean? Is like unexpected stuff. That turns out to be like one of the best points of the meeting. I'm just curious, out of your career, do you remember one of those moments or can share something about that?
I do remember one presentation in particular. It was a speaker who had overcome the odds and was explaining his journey that he should not have been alive at that moment in time. Physicians, well-respected physicians, had indicated that his time was going to be up, and he
Yeah.
decided no, that was not going to happen. He had too many things coming up in his life that were too important. He was bound and determined to walk his daughter down the aisle. She was
Hmm.
getting married, I think, 6 months from the time he got his diagnosis that he had, a very short time left.
Hmm.
So he did his research very carefully
Yeah.
and defied the odds and was standing before us, I believe, 2 years later. There was
Wow.
not a dry eye in the house. And very seldom did I see a speaker of that organization get a standing ovation. That gentleman got one.
You know, that's I think you got a chance to have worked with a lot of speakers, and you never know, right? I mean, you try and do your best work, you research and do all these other things, but you never know exactly how your audience is going to react to a speaker. But that's really key, and the fact that he earned the standing ovation from an audience that doesn't normally give standing ovations for whatever
Right.
reason is even more meaningful. Do you have any idea how you pick those speakers? Like, or do you have a system for it now, or do you still like it's sometimes it's pure intuition?
Um, that speaker, I believe, was introduced to us. I worked for a membership organization.
Hmm.
So the one of the members had heard him at another program.
Aha.
I believe he'd also written a book
Yep.
about his journey, or at the time, I believe he was in the midst of writing the book.
Uh-huh.
And one of our members had recommended him.
And
That how in general? Well, currently the organization I'm working for, I handle everything except the content of the meeting.
hmm.
That's not a part of the process.
Hmm.
But in the past, it's been making sure that our strategic initiatives were all addressed. Like I think about the conference that I worked on. Uh, it, it took place in June of 2023. Well, there was another person in the organization who was an education specialist in the field.
Hmm.
She handled the call for speakers and vetting all of the proposals that came in.
Hmm.
But I worked very closely with her just to identify that we had a new strategic plan in place, that our three strategic initiatives were all addressed by one. One of them was addressed in each of the presentations, or there would be something just along the lines of body of knowledge, something
Hmm.
that maybe didn't fit any of those three initiatives, but it would be skills that an attendee could learn and apply in their job.
Speaking of skills, I'm kind of curious, right? There's lots of meeting planners, right? We're in MPI, we know many of them. I'm just curious, right, Lisa, what do you feel like makes it you unique as a professional here in the meetings industry?
I think it's because I'm an avid learner.
Mm.
I, it's so important to keep our skills current.
Yep. Especially now,
Um,
right?
oh, absolutely now. Um, I was attending, and we missed you, John, at Cascadia, the
Oh, I know.
Cascadia Educational Conference. It took place this past Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in Salem, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
It's for anyone who isn't familiar. It's an annual conference, 22 years running now, of between the MPI Oregon and Washington chapters.
Yes.
So John has been a speaker there in the past. I remember last year, I was just thinking about this before we signed on. You got pressed into service doing a few other duties last year when we were down at Salishan.
That's right. I became the auctioneer with about
You
4 minutes warning, Lisa.
That was it. That was it. You need somebody who could turn on a dime, you call John.
Oh yeah, it's MPI for Meetings Professional International Cascadia.net. And if you didn't know, Lisa, too, I'm a past co-chair, meaning I help actually
Ah,
design and plan and execute that meeting in the past with our NSA Oregon past president, Kathy Mason, who I love dearly, and such a great experience, right?
well, I know I didn't know that, but I'm very happy to hear that,
Yeah.
and I'm not at all surprised. Um, Technology was key to the content of the program. There were
Hmm.
many other skills that were presentations were for skill development that were offered, but of course, a favorite speaker in the industry. I don't think you can have a conference for meeting professionals without him. Is Jim Spellos.
Oh, he was there too, wasn't he?
Oh, he was there. He did a keynote on AI, which
Yeah.
just had some really practical no knowledge that something we could all apply. Something I was working on yesterday. I just thought, well, if I just tell Chat GPT something a little bit more specific, they're going to come back and give me the document that I want. And just don't say, I want to revise my resume to apply for this job. Tell them what it is you want to emphasize, what to bring out, accentuate the positive, as the old song goes. But you have to tell ChatGPT what or whatever program you happen to be using what exactly. Give us some specifics, some bullet points.
Well,
So,
Lisa,
sir, yes.
I was just going to share too. I know a lot of AI speakers, and I got last year I got to see Jim present back to back at Cascadia and then Northern California's ACE, their conference and exposition.
Mm.
And Jim, to me, currently too, is still one of the top AI speakers. And I know his presentation this year is wildly different than last year's because he literally changes his talk from session to session with something that's happening new in the AI field. Isn't that
Well,
amazing?
most definitely, it was different than last year because AI is since the time we signed on 20 minutes ago. AI
Yeah,
is changing.
changing. Yeah.
And Jim did another session that was, I wasn't able to attend because I came in last minute. I wasn't supposed to be at Cascadia. I was supposed to be managing one of my government meetings in Boulder, Colorado, but that got canceled. So I ended
Oh,
up being a last minute registrant and last minute acceptee to the hosted buyer program, for
oh,
which I'm
good for
most
you.
grateful.
Yeah.
But Jim's session, the deep dive, a two-part session, the deep dive on AI, that was full, and there was a waiting list. So,
That's what I was gonna say. I said without sight unseen, because I saw it happen too last year. That well, I know why, because I was paired against him. You know, you never want to be paired against Spellos in a breakout session, right? Because
oh,
he was, and they do it after his keynote, so everybody already knows, and so now it's standing room only in the breakout with
I
Spellos, and it
remember
should be.
that.
It should be.
I just remember that only too well. We were in Salishan on the Oregon coast,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there were three breakout rooms, a ballroom subdivided with most hotels have very thin air walls. You were on one side, you had your group energized. Jim was on the other side with, yes, his overflow, people standing out in the hall and hoping the fire marshal didn't come by. And I was in the room in the center because I was just taking on the role of the chair of CAST, the Committee
Oh,
Against Sex Trafficking,
right.
and learning about human trafficking. We had a speaker on that. Unfortunately, he had 8 or 10 people in the room
Right.
because your session was so popular and Jim's was so popular. And here we have a session that's we know we all need to learn about this because unfortunately the hospitality industry is a contributor to trafficking, but we can be the anti-traffickers. We just
Yeah.
need to learn what we need to do. So I was transitioning into that role, and I really felt I needed to be there and
Yeah.
learned a tremendous amount. But here's a soft-spoken speaker, rich on content, but here's what two very energized, animated sessions on either side of the air wall. So
It's tough. But let's take a minute to talk about this, though. It's called CAST, right? The Committee Against Sex Trafficking. For
yes.
those who don't know, MPI Washington State chapter was the first to sign something called the Code, which was a commitment and training against sex trafficking. I was on the board at the time, and
Mm.
so my signature is on that. And I think some of the stats, for those who don't know, right, sex trafficking happens at hotels because you can take somebody in, right? It is a temporary location. Things can happen. Like the Super Bowl was another example of where sometimes people were brought in only for that event and then it disappears. And so that's why the meetings industry has a responsibility or maybe an obligation to help end this. So, Lisa, tell a little bit more about CAST and, of course, why do you choose to donate or volunteer your time here?
I took over the role from a person who is absolutely committed to ending trafficking, Jane Cantor
Oh, yeah.
from Visit Bellevue. I
So
had a
much
chance
work
to
you do.
catch up with her. She was at Cascadia,
Oh,
caught up for the first time in a while. It was wonderful to see her. She is very passionate about ending trafficking. She lives in a community where it's very sadly has experienced a lot of human trafficking. You wouldn't think of Bellevue, Washington, being a very affluent area, one of the technology capitals of the country.
yep.
You wouldn't expect that to be the case, but unfortunately it is. So she had taken this on as a very personal initiative. She needed someone to tap as successor, so I wanted to get involved in the chapter and thought I've done so many things for MPI. I was the director of ACE, what you mentioned, the Annual Conference and Expo for the Northern California chapter. The
Amazing.
first director of that way back in 2017 seems like a lifetime ago. I chaired education
Hmm.
and various other committees. This was something new, and I was see MPI as being for my own professional development. Of course, I want to give back to the chapter, give back to the industry, but what can I learn along the way? Something, an area for development for me. So I knew so little about human trafficking at the time. So I've spent the past year learning as much as possible, and I've taken over the reins from Jane
Hmm.
just a few months ago. I'm
Oh,
working on identifying a speaker. We have a lead on someone from Spokane, from the convention center there. So, Spokane, if you're online, please read that email that I sent. Give me a call. We also spoke. We had a speaker on about FIFA, the World Cup, which, for
hmm.
anyone who isn't aware, is going to be coming to Seattle in summer of 2026. So
Big
that's
deal.
why in my neighborhood, the Seattle waterfront and much of the city is being prepared for what is really the largest sporting event. The viewership is something like many times that of the Super Bowl.
Yes,
So, because it's so internationally focused, so
that's right.
many of the games were going to be played here. I can't imagine what that's going to do to the city. But with all of the wonderful the joy that will bring to our city and the revenue it will generate and how the hotels and the restaurants and all of our hospitality partners will benefit. At the same time, sadly, a big event like that is an opportunity for those who have nefarious purposes,
That's
such as
right.
traffickers.
Hmm.
So we did have a speaker a few months ago at the MPI chapter speak on plans for FIFA, the World Cup, and she did touch on. She offered quite a few slides on anti-trafficking and their initiatives. So I know that the leadership of our chapter is really interested in working with her. How can we, as the industry,
So,
help use the opportunity to combat trafficking?
one of the top items here too, because we are a coast city, is the Asian Pacific Islander part. That sometimes people are brought overseas from various cultures, right? Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thailand, or other countries like that. And that is a thing. I also remember too, Bellevue had that big sting. There was like 100 plus people that were named in a huge crackdown that the police found, I think, like a trafficking ring. And so I think that's a key. Based on all this, the work that you've done in it, Lisa, what's the number one or two things somebody could do if they thought that something was happening in a trafficking case?
As they've been telling us for years, I mean, it's an expression that do counteract terrorism, it's the same thing here. If you see something, say something. Don't try to take it on yourself. If you see someone who looks like they might be trafficking a child, something just doesn't look right, maybe
Yeah.
that doesn't look like that person's child, that something doesn't seem right about that relationship, say something. Call the authorities. Contact your local law enforcement.
And let them handle it. But at least
Let,
then they
let
have an opportunity to, if it's a wrong case, you don't know if it's right or wrong at that point, but at least you might be able to help identify something that's
no,
happening.
no, if you're wrong, well, no harm done. I mean,
Yeah.
if the person gets investigated, I'm sure that that's happened many times, and the person has been found innocent
Because
and
shifting
released.
shifting gears a little bit, Lisa, to resilience, right? I'm going to go back now to March of 2020, where the meetings profession was probably one of the hardest hit in all industries that existed. So, Lisa, what happened to you in March of 2020, right? And then what happened with you on the virtual side, if anything?
Well, I have an interesting story about that. I
Oh,
was
good.
working for a pediatric mental health organization that had just opened a new office in the Bay Area. They'd had great success in their New York headquarters for 10 years and
Uh-huh.
opened an office in the Bay Area. I was handling their clinical marketing, and I hit my stride, working with the clinical management, just so many programs that we had set up to get the word out to our community, to schools, to parent groups, to offering professional development to teachers, other educators. And I was invited to visit the New York office for some orientation, getting acquainted with the staff there.
Hmm.
And at the time, New York had not, I remember as I was leaving, the chief operating officer came by to say farewell, and she said, "We are so fortunate here. We don't have a single case of COVID." Really, well, let's put it this way, there was no known case of it at that time. And I
Okay.
happened to be flying to Seattle. I was meeting some friends, and we were attending the opera gala here. And as I arrived in Seattle, what was thought to be the first two deaths from COVID had happened at that point.
Yep.
And as I departed to go home to San Francisco, 4 days later, there had been six deaths. So it was one of the few times I was really happy to get out of the Puget Sound area. But of course, I got home, and what happened? We had started having numerous infections, hospitalizations, and unfortunately many deaths in the Bay Area.
Yep.
And within a few weeks, just after I got home, I had a cold. Fortunately, it was just a cold. But everybody, you've been in New York, you've been in Seattle, you know what happened there. It actually wasn't in Seattle, it was in a nursing home in Kirkland.
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere near there, but how do I know? Yeah, anyway, everyone was concerned about me. So
Hmm.
I went into lockdown a week ahead of everybody else.
Hmm.
And then we pivoted there was a word we swore we weren't going to use again, but we transitioned, we migrated our in-person meetings to virtual whenever we could. And we had some success with that. Brought in a number of attendees that even if we had been able to go forward with a live meeting, some wouldn't have been able to attend because they live too far away from the place where the venue where the meeting was being hosted.
Yeah.
So it was a very challenging time for that industry because you would have in many instances two parents working at home and trying to keep their children homeschooled. The Bay
Hmm.
Area was probably the most stringent place in the country when it came to regulations, what you could and couldn't do. And that lockdown lasted there much longer than it did in other places, probably even longer than Seattle. So it was a real challenge for the parents, for the teachers learning to teach online.
Hmm.
I I think everybody came away stronger as a result of that. I'm sure that the children there was the whole issue about what I heard from so many parents is that and teachers the children weren't adequately socialized during that time because not enough, you don't have the opportunity to play with your friends. You only get to see them online. You don't get to walk to or from school, see them at recess, whatever, in the lunchroom. But I really think that everyone came out of that stronger as a result. Unfortunately, that job, because mental health for young people wasn't exactly the top priority for parents at that time.
Yep.
Sadly, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So our organization suffered quite a few layoffs,
Yep.
my,
Yeah.
my being one of them.
Yep. Hmm. Wow, Lisa. So then, in the virtual meetings that you had that were successful, what do you think is like one or two things that made them successful?
Are you referring to during COVID
Yeah.
as we pivoted?
Yeah.
Um, just the fact that we were a bi-coastal organization, and we would call ourselves, the word that everyone was using was borderless.
Oh.
So there was an organization that wanted a program on disappointment. So an instance was when I was on a meeting with the marketing team. Everyone was asking, who do you think that we should tap for this? I said, well, our clinical director here in the Bay Area just wrote an op-ed piece on this. It was just published.
Oh.
And he loves to give presentations. He's a speaker in many conferences. Why don't we ask him to take that, turn it into a presentation? So the first, I called him immediately afterwards. He said, "Well, this is a group in New York. They want somebody from out here. Like it, yes, they do. They want somebody who knows the topic very well.
Yeah.
Remember, we're borderless."
Right.
So that was a tremendous success. That we could bring people. Just you have to think about time zone, but anybody who travels has to deal with time zones as well. So you just have to remember what time it is and where your attendees are going to be. It might be early morning for one group or late night for another, but you can make it work.
Time zone math. Yeah, time zone math is definitely one of the new skill sets that either you develop or you get it wrong. Speaking of developing new skills, then too, Lisa, from your seat, right? You have a lot of great experience behind you and in you. What do you think the future of virtual and hybrid is in the meetings industry?
Well, I think both are here to stay, and that's thanks to people like you, John.
Aw, thank
Um,
you.
there's nothing like a live meeting. There's nothing like
No.
gathering in person. Sitting in a room with like-minded people, or maybe people who aren't like-minded at all, who are all there to learn and to engage.
Hmm.
That's important, and have the opportunity to meet them, to renew acquaintances, to meet new people, to network for whatever your purposes may be. If it's for business development, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to hire somebody, all of those networking opportunities are important. And just at a meeting, I think something like Cascadia, where you're there for 2.5 days, an opportunity to have fun. And that has to be built into an agenda of any program of that length. So that's in terms of the live space.
Yeah.
I'm a strong advocate for live meetings. I was delighted when we went back to them,
Hmm.
recognizing also that not everyone has a budget to travel to such a meeting.
They're expensive. They're really expensive now, Lisa, right?
Oh, yes, they are. Having the budget to travel, the registration fees, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Various circumstances in people's lives. Maybe there's a travel freeze within a company.
Hmm. Yep.
There could be last minute illnesses, which precludes a person from participating. Whatever the instance may be, that's where hybrid comes in very handy.
Oh, you want to hear two good hybrid stories, Lisa?
I would love to. I think one of them involves you. Was it Cascadia 2 years ago?
Oh, no, no, no.
Well,
I
that's
don't
not one
know.
of the stories. Okay.
Maybe you can share that one. No, this one, the first one was I have a mastermind that has all these business owners. And remember CrowdStrike that like really messed up all the airlines' computers? Remember that?
Yes, yes, I do.
15% of the people could not get their flight. They were all canceled or delayed. And so they gave up and realized, though, that this meeting has this high end hybrid that I ran. And so they just clicked a button and they participated all 2.5 days virtually and never missed a minute of the content. So I think that's one.
Hmm.
And the second one was that in person people at a 3 day conference that was at a beachside location, some of the in person people went to the beach, clicked the link, and watched the last session from the beach. That's
Okay.
the future, right? That's the
It,
future.
it,
So,
it is the future. It is the future because we have to remember. I'm thinking about particularly uh, the MPI chapter in Washington State. We
yeah,
are Most of our membership is in the Puget Sound region. That's fact. But we
yes,
have members from the Cascade Range,
yes,
the Cascade area, and
mhm,
Eastern Washington.
yes,
Spokane was, as I mentioned earlier, they were very present at Cascadia.
yes.
So the opportunity to bring them in, if it's not always possible for them to get in their cars and drive 3 or 4 or 5 hours or whatever it takes when the mountain passes are covered with snow, as we've had a lot of lately,
Yeah.
um, a different opportunity for them to participate and engage. That's important. That's one example of many. This is a statewide meeting. For a national meeting, even more so.
So the fun fact, Lisa, is that Chris Woods, with Encore, is on the board,
Mhm. Yes.
tapped me, and we are collaborating to bring the monthly meetings hybrid finally. And so this next meeting that's coming up will be broadcast to both Spokane and Walla Walla and the Tri Cities. Isn't that cool?
That's wonderful. I know that the meeting that we had, was it last month or the
Mhm.
month before, maybe January?
Yes.
I think that was the first time that you were there in the room with all of your equipment, with your headphones as the MC for bringing in the virtual audience. I think it was last minute, wasn't it? I had this conversation with Chris. It
It
was
was it was a trial, so that's why it wasn't
trial.
widely publicized, but they just picked
Yes.
5 or 6, interested members from the east side of the state and said, "Let's try it." And it was so positive that they said, "Let's go do it again." That's cool.
That's great. That's great. Because people who live nearby want to engage and they will
Yeah.
continue to be there.
Yeah.
But what if you wake up with a cold, or your child is sick and has to stay home from school and you can't leave, or whatever your situation may be, or you're just so overwhelmed with work you can't spend 2 hours driving there and back. It's just easier to just sit home and engage for the time of the meeting.
Oh yeah, here I
And
got
then
one more too. You remember our good friend Jim Coccabellos?
I don't think so.
He was the 30 plus year member, and unfortunately, he passed away suddenly. And so, at his celebration of
Mm.
life, I actually live streamed it. And one of our very good members had a medical thing happen in the morning and just decided not to go. But she said she watched the live stream from her bed when she could and just bawled her eyes out because, our
Oh,
friend is no longer with us. And, but that virtual allowed, this is pre 2020 too. Like we were doing this early, we that allowed her to participate in an important event that was there. Hey, what's your story from that you had for me 2 years ago, Cascadia? Did you want to share that
whoa.
one?
You were to be presenting on hybrid meetings.
Yeah.
Of all the irony, you couldn't attend for some reason. I'm not sure what that was. Maybe you remember, maybe you wish to share, maybe you don't. But you weren't able to be there. So our friend Tony, whose last name I don't,
Gavalanus, Tony
Gavalanus,
G.
yes, yes, another expert in the tech area of meetings.
Yeah.
He was pulled in it was pretty late in the game, wasn't he? Was he even to be a part of that presentation?
Yeah, actually, I invited him in earlier with that, to saying, oh, he talked about it because he's a brand new member. Right
Yes.
at that time, 2 years ago, he was a brand new member and said, "Hey, yeah, let's collab a little bit." And then, so here's the backstory, Lisa. Right, I got COVID from whatever some other trip, and so and this is the part too. Like for me and my responsibility, do I want to walk around COVID with my friends at Cascadia? No. So I'm going to
Thank
stay
you.
home.
We
Yes,
appreciate
yes,
that.
yeah, right. That's our integrity 101. And so I said, Tony, here, this is your opportunity. You're going to get elevated to the in-person keynoter, and I'll come in virtual. And yeah, and we did it, and it worked. And nobody got sick, and it was a really we practiced what we preached, right, Lisa?
Yes, yes, I attended that session. I met Tony at the
Mm.
first timers reception because I
Yeah.
had moved just a couple months earlier
All
from
right.
the Bay Area to Seattle. It was my first Cascadia. Tony is a brand new member. We chatted at that reception. He was telling me about what was going on. I said, "Oh, wow. Well, if I wasn't planning on attending that earlier, I'm going to now." So it was so interesting watching you. You were there virtually, and Tony was facilitating in the room, and it was as if you'd rehearsed it for months. You couldn't have done a better job. I mean, I know a lot of it had to be on the fly, but you both pulled it off so beautifully.
That's what happens when you get two pros, though. I've worked with
Yes,
Tony on other programs with our good friends like Drew. Come on, who's our director of programming? I think she's VP of programming now. Jackie Woods, Jackie Collard Baker,
Jackie
and
Baker.
yeah,
She's
Jolly. Yeah, it's
Jackie
so.
Baker.
See, yeah, we've collaborated on stuff and since then, and I think that's really cool. All right, we're into the
That's
fun
great.
part of this. Speaking of fun, Lisa, you're into the fun part of this. Is a brand new feature of my podcast. This is called the Speed Round. I'm gonna ask you some questions, all right, and you are gonna answer them as let's see as fast as possible. Okay. All right.
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
I'll attempt to keep pace.
Perfect, Lisa. Okay. Here's an easy question. Here's the softball. What do you love about cats?
I love everything about cats. They're just the most wonderful companions.
What's a quality of a client that you love?
Collaboration.
Good one. Uh, what's a Monday morning application you made in your lifetime?
I think it goes back to that what I was saying about the speaker on resilience and how he overcame the odds.
Hmm.
Just recognizing that anything is possible. Don't
Oh,
never give up.
never give up. What's the best conference you have ever planned?
Proud of what we did at MPI Northern California, the ACE 2017, where we migrated through collaboration with a team, implementing a strategic meetings management program, reinstating a general session, and discussing a very difficult topic, which was risk management preparedness. Something that isn't at all fun, but it's something that people need to hear about.
Oh, well, bravo. And ACE 2 often was and maybe still is one of the largest conferences in the entire MPI universe, for especially for chapters. So congratulations for that. Who's one of your favorite speakers to work with?
One of my favorite speakers. Um, well, because I've worked in so many different industries, I can't think of anyone. And I'm sorry, no one comes to mind. I can think of some people that were very healthcare specific. Uh,
Well, here
but
I'll do this as a follow-up question. What's the most important thing that you want when you're working with a speaker?
preparedness on that person's part, um, clear communication, um, setting goals, and a speaker who's willing to receive feedback.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Okay, genius. And the last question here, Lisa, is if you could magically get people to remember one thing from this podcast, what would it be?
To remember from this podcast, um, I think it's invest in technology. If step outside your comfort zone, but don't be afraid, and always be willing to learn something new and take some risks.
Genius. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. And I look forward to seeing you around town. Hopefully, we will get a chance, our chance to catch up soon.
Thank you, John. Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Lisa Burkett. Well, what did we learn? Lisa loves everything about cats. We learned that sometimes the unexpected speakers become the highlight of a conference. And most of all, I think Lisa would share with us, just keep learning, right? I feel like the fish, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. But she says, just keep learning. Speaking of learning, hey, if you're here on this this podcast, make sure and subscribe, share, like, and comment. If you want all the episodes like our amazing friend here, Lisa, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online and subscribe on one of 13 podcast platforms, including the number one here for this podcast, the Apple Podcast platform. Click the link or go to this QR code, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/con. And maybe I can get Lisa to help me with my conference this year using some of that magical CMM energy here in Seattle. It'll be the last week of October, including a special Halloween after party. And last of all, if you want to be like Lisa, well, you can. All you got to do is go to this link, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, and select interview, and you could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Hey, I look forward to seeing you next time.
Don't we start people and keep more people? Show you got heart.